I haven't done a press briefing in a minute. It's time to do a press briefing. It's not every day you get to do a press briefing. Press briefing, yeah. Press briefing, yeah. Let's go. Oh, man. Just stretching the old back out before we get the old thing started. Okay, a little clapping here and there. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Dark O'Shea Show. I have a little time off for lunch, so I figured let's do a live stream of the press briefing. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the revolution.
Yo, Papa, what up? Hope everything is going well with you. How's everyone feeling? How's everyone doing? Papa, I don't know if you've ever experienced me with a press briefing. You never know what's going to happen. We are waiting for them to come in, per usual. I do have some... They're talking about
this was about
the whole Trump
justice.
affidavit.
What exactly was being did that we don't know yet, but it doesn't look good.
As soon as the press briefing starts, I will...
So then let me ask ABC News investigative reporter Catherine Falders, what does that...
Nothing like a good old press briefing to make you lose faith in humanity. Exactly. It's kind of...
much from...
There's just so much gaslighting that happens in these press briefings that I kind of love it and hate it at the same time. So, you never know what you're going to get. It's like a box of chocolates. So we just wait.
Some of this information could impact other ongoing investigations, potentially where the witnesses
How you doing this
cross
Friday?
over here. So I think there's still much more to come on that element of it. But I do think that at least legal analysts would also say that it seems to be much more advanced and ongoing than we might have originally thought.
Duh.
Well, then let's bring in our...
We're fighting about the FBI affidavit. Everything's redacted. You know, you see some things about top secret information, but it's exactly what we assumed it was going to be.
Unlawful taking of presidential records. What could this mean for the former president?
Well, what stuck out to me in part from a legal perspective was that we now know which subsection of the Espionage Act the government
Good. Don't let your head explode,
all we knew
man.
From the warrant
Ain't worth
was that
it.
it was 18 U.S.C. 793. Now we know.
It's better to laugh your way to a slow, impeding death than let these people control your emotions.
Knew that sharing of the information could injure the United States or help foreign adversaries. There's also language in there explaining more about the problems with sharing information with foreign adversaries. So my question here, and I agree with the others, we don't know the details, but it certainly raises a question as to whether this has gone beyond just possession and into sharing the information with foreign adversaries. We also found out there were parts of Mar-a-Lago that were not searched.
All right. We gotta have word of the day. What's our word of the day? Papa, what's our word of the day? If they say it, we scream. That's kind of the rules. They say it, then we all scream like this. What is the word of the day? Man. Papa, you choose the word of the day. Historic. Oh, that is a good one. Historic. Beautiful. All right. Got to hold me accountable if she says it. The word of the day is historic. All right. This is like the stupidest camera angle I've ever seen in my life. What is this? You better fix it before she walks in.
Them over to Russia, Saudi Arabia, some other country. You know, that's going to go clearly to the mindset of the former president. I mean, he didn't.
Don't apologize. Never apologize for things. Not on this channel. Unless she says it a lot. God, if she says it a lot, then we're screwed.
Clearly would show maybe some of the things that we're talking about. The FBI never would have gotten this search warrant approved unless they had an immense.
As always, guys, I am currently live on Facebook, Rumble. Make sure to follow me on Rumble as a backup always as we ramp up into the midterms. You never know what video of mine's going to get flagged. I've been flagged for stuff and I've asked them to explain it. I've never gotten an explanation. So make sure to follow me on Rumble as a backup. Great platform. I just wish more people would buy into it. It's just not as great of a platform as YouTube style-wise and amount of information. So what are you going to do? I said I would never. I would apologize. I would apologize. I never said I would. Okay. Oh. Okay. Okay. You should. Okay. It's just, you know, words have meaning. As we wait, something like taking a break from work to go live and watch an absolute catastrophe.
As John Carl did, that his lawyers did not argue for that. They were not party to this case. They did not argue that in court. So I think you'll see much more of that and calls to have the whole affidavit released, Kira. But as you know, this is an extremely...
Is there anything that annoys you? There's nothing that annoys me more than listening to up talk. You know, and it's like, especially with girls, as soon as they start like rattling off like a few things in a row, they just go, and then I did this today, and then I probably want to go do that, and then I want to do this also. It's just so ridiculous. And then I want to do that. I can't believe people do this on
More than
live
20
TV.
pages out of the 38 pages of this affidavit. Do those redact?
We're going to hear like affidavit talk for months. It's going to be absolutely nothing. It's going to be like the Russia stuff. It's just, when is it enough?
I mean, well, you know what's I think interesting there is that it doesn't sound like the judge second guessed the Department of Justice's decisions with respect to the redactions. Because remember, DOJ wanted nothing made public. Donald Trump's lawyers didn't take a position either way in court with respect.
I want to find a refrigerator full of solid gold. Yeah, me too. Solid
So
gold
I do
butter.
think the Department of Justice is in this really weird situation where they're trying to adhere to traditional norms of secrecy, not just to protect national security, but also to protect Donald
Look at
Trump.
these documents.
But the former president is spreading misinformation, and it looks like from the affidavit, this has gone back from the beginning, that his...
Misinformation drink. Oh, it's a good shot. This is like the worst shot.
Trump's sort of spokespeople were saying that everything that was taken was not classified. So I think it shows a number of things. It shows that Donald Trump probably had some knowledge here. There's even a mention in the affidavit that there are handwritten notes by the former president, on some of these documents. So they're walking a very fine line. I have to assume that given that the judge agreed with DOJ over DOJ's.
The mainstream media has nothing. They have to put fake notes on the toilet. Yeah, I know. I read some of the things that they were talking about, and some of the far leftists that were calling this a win and stuff. I'm just like, he had documents that said top secret, so.
In Mar-a-Lago, and who saw those documents, if anyone?
And let's just bring it full circle here with you, John. You know, you covered the president. You've written the books. Why did Trump want these documents in the first place? I know this involves some speculation.
You got the
but
books.
Look, you got to know this former president pretty well. What could be the theories here of why he wanted
possible
all
or
those
potential?
classified documents
Oh, dear
in
God.
the first place?
You know, it's such a good question. I think part of it is understanding that Donald Trump did not see these as government documents.
2 minutes.
His personal
I got things to do, lady.
something that belonged to him, not something that belonged to the United States of America. And he knows that information is power. What is in these documents, we don't know. I was always intrigued by the one line on the
But it's better to
invoice,
speculate about it.
Of material taken during the execution of that search warrant, the reference to the president of France. What was that? What was it? What information about the president of France was so significant that it was specifically listed?
You owe me money, so.
in that list of material taken, specifically
So,
listed when there was so little that was specifically
so
listed.
therefore you owe me
there's
money.
There's some significance there. Was he, did he want dirt on the president of France? Did he want to take that with him? I mean, if so, why?
Oh my God.
Who knows?
It's just like, so this release is just like pure porn to the corporate media. They're just like, we don't actually know what's in these redacted documents, but we do know one thing for sure. There are documents, and they are redacted. But we can only speculate to what's inside. It's just typing on a phone, no problem,
It
Papa.
seems like it was all just kind of thrown together.
So pay
in a
up.
chaotic way.
Yes, sir.
And taken out of the White House during.
Speaking of paying, if you want to support my channel, you go to buymeacoffee.com/Derek O'Shea Show. Link is in the description below. It's the only way to super chat on my show.
I thought you were going to ask me why did he say he wanted the
Sit down.
affidavit released? And I've got one theory on that, which is
What is
this
it?
affidavit refers to multiple witnesses.
Wow.
The suggestion here is that those multiple witnesses may include people, may include people very close to Donald Trump. And he wants to know who those people are. He wants to know who it is that is giving information to federal authorities.
You could hear it in this guy's voice, like trying to stretch everything he can out of this story. He's like, I don't know what you want me to say. Donald Trump knows a couple guys that, let's just say there's information to be passed around.
Essentially to use the, use the mafia term, ratted him out. I think that's one reason why you see this affidavit so heavily redacted is investigators
All
know
right.
that there'll be an effort.
Happy Friday.
Thanks, Jay.
We're excited to have Deputy Director.
The nuclear
of the
sequence
National
is just
Economic
synopsis of the
Policy,
movie
Bharat
Captain Nuke and the Bomb.
Ramamurthy, here with us again today to discuss the student loan announcements this week.
Please don't
and
say historic.
How they will benefit working middle
so scared.
class families. He'll have about 20-25 minutes. I know the in-town pool is going to have to leave about 1:45-ish, so he's going to stay with us as long as possible to take as many questions as he can.
This is as loud as I can get her.
And then
Sorry,
after that,
guys.
really, you guys have to leave, and we have to also continue our day. And with that, Bharat. Okay, thank you again.
Hey, good afternoon. Good to see you all. Before taking questions, I want to just talk a little bit more about the economic impact of the administration's student loan plan. This plan will lift a large weight off of tens of millions of middle-class Americans, people who came by and large from working families and who are working class now, teachers, nurses, firefighters, police, members of the military, and more. By lifting this weight, we are not only benefiting them and their families, we are benefiting the communities that they live in.
Stay with me, Papa.
And the economy as a whole. So, for example, there's good evidence that student loan debt makes it harder for people to start new small businesses. These relief actions mean that more middle-class Americans can open more businesses in their communities. That means more job opportunities in the years to come. Student loan debt also makes it harder for people to buy a home. These actions will mean that more middle-class Americans may be able to finally afford a down payment, buy a home in the years to come, and start building wealth that they can pass along to their kids. As the president has said, his core economic plan is to
and put the
strengthen
button
middle
on the rest of it.
class because
Exactly.
that helps
2K
people.
average
And these actions are
taxpayer is
targeted
going
right
to
at
pay
America's middle class.
$2,000 for all these.
Nearly 90% of
people.
Receiving the relief are making under $75,000 a year. The extra money for Pell recipients helps provide additional relief to people.
I make under $75,000 a year, and I paid off my student loans. So,
and when the president says that he's committed to growing the economy from the bottom up and the middle out, he's serious. That's why over the course of the last year and a half, we've been
mandatory
able to
lockdowns. Imagine
support
that.
to small businesses, support to people facing the risk of eviction or foreclosure.
You mean all the people that
at
were
risk of going hungry?
Biden gave those jobs back, though.
That's why the
So,
president's
Papa.
infrastructure bill is focused on creating hundreds of thousands of good-paying jobs, nearly 90% of which won't require a college degree. And it's the reason why our economy has roared back, and the unemployment rate now stands at a historic low, even as the economies of other leading countries are faltering. So this plan is working, and the student loan relief is the next part in it. With that, I also want to address an issue that I know has been...
If you say
coming up
something
recently,
works,
which is the
it
cost,
works.
Of this proposal. Our estimate is that the
$52K
debt
a
relief
year.
proposal will
Yeah.
reduce
I made
annual
40K a
receipts
year, and I paid
in
it
the
under
student loan
40K a
program
year,
by
and I paid it
about
off. So
$24
I agree with
a
you,
year
man.
over the next 10 years.
If you prioritize something in
So
your
the way to
life, you
think
can do
about
it.
this
These
is that
people never
because we are
did.
providing debt relief, reducing the outstanding balance for some people, eliminating it for other people.
Jack,
that
good to
means
see you,
we're not
man.
going to be collecting certain amount of payments that we otherwise would have been collecting, and that totals about $24 billion a year on average over the next 10 years. So let's put that $24 billion in context. That represents 1.5% of the deficit reduction that we are projecting for this fiscal year before the announcement. And it is far less than the $350 billion plus that we've already done in PPP loan forgiveness since last July. Now, consistent with long-standing budget practices, and consistent with the comments that I made on Wednesday here,
Exactly.
the official budgetary score will be produced by the Education Department and the Office of Management and Budget in the coming weeks, and actually the Office of Management and Budget is going to be putting out more detail on this process and how it's slightly different than the preliminary estimate that I provided later today. So with that, happy to take questions.
Are you happy to take questions? We're about to find out.
The first question is, thanks for the number. Why was this a number that we didn't have the past couple days?
Yep.
And then this modeling is based off of, you said 75% of people taking advantage of the program. If 25% of people aren't taking advantage of the program, do you consider that a flaw in the program? Would you consider the program a success of that number? If you can talk us through this.
Sure. So look, we have to make an assumption about how many people take advantage of the program in order to provide this preliminary estimate. The reason that we chose 75% is that it's, broadly speaking, in line with the take-up rate of the most similar education department initiative that we could find. In other words, there was another education department initiative in the past that was supposed to provide targeted debt relief to a set of borrowers who were eligible for it, and roughly 75% of the borrowers in that particular program took advantage of it. Now, we are hoping to get as close to 100% as possible, but we, for the purposes of putting out a preliminary estimate on this, we had to choose a number, and we felt like 75% was the most defensible. As for why you're getting it today, you guys asked us for it, so we're providing you with information.
So the way you're explaining how this is being paid for, how you just went through this, the $24 billion per year, are you considering? There was a bit of are you still considering this self-paid for, right? Because mitigation and compensating it in other ways are not necessarily having internal pays for this bill. So are you still phrasing this as it pays for itself, or are you phrasing it in a different way?
What I would say is that yes, this is paid for. It is paid for and far more by the amount of deficit reduction that we're already on track for this year. Like I said, we're on track for $1.7 trillion in deficit reduction this year. That means, practically speaking, compared to the previous year, $1.7 trillion more dollars are coming into the Treasury than are going out. And we're using a portion of that, a very small portion of it, to provide relief to middle-class families consistent with the president's plan. So yes, we consider it fully paid for.
Pixies.
Ron, thanks for doing this. Sure. The median household income in this country right now is roughly $67,000, which means that this is going to go for those up to $125,000. Those individuals are already making individually almost twice the median household income in this country. What do you say to those critics who say, you're not just helping the middle class, though I understand 90% will be making under $75,000, you're still helping what is a smaller percentage, but a significant percentage of individuals who most Americans would view as making a lot of money?
Sure. So look, in our view, as you noted, nearly 90% of the benefits go to people making under $75,000 a year. And our view is that the folks that you mentioned, under $125,000, they are middle class families, and I think that they would widely be considered as such. And look, I want to be totally clear about this point.
$125,000 or $250,000. Would you view that as a middle class family,
Sure.
a family that makes under $250,000?
Absolutely. Look, the key cutoff here is that nobody in the top 5%,
Whoa.
whether they're in an individual income or household income,
Random jobs is coming, Papa.
is going to get a dollar. And look, it's extremely consistent with what the president has said on the tax side.
They'll talk about union jobs or something.
Under $400,000 a year should face a tax increase. So the economic story of this country over the last couple of decades, if we're going to look at it, is that there's been a relatively small sliver of folks who have done extremely well, the top 1%, top 5% or so. And
your voting
goal
base?
is to make sure that people below that, the bottom 95%, get a little bit more relief, get a little bit more breathing room, and that's exactly what this policy does. But by the way, targeted even more narrowly than that, primarily, overwhelmingly, to people making under $75,000 a year.
And to follow up, if I can quickly, the White House yesterday was pretty vocal on Twitter, which it isn't always, criticizing some of the critics of this program.
The adults are back in charge.
Among them, saying how much money they received in PPP loans in the past. I think you would agree that there is a difference between a loan program as it existed, which was conceived to be the PPP program that was conceived to be forgivable, assuming you spent a majority, I think 80%, on the payroll, as opposed to these loans, which were for individuals with expectation when they made money, they'd be paying it back. So is that a fair comparison, and why?
Yeah, we absolutely think it's a fair comparison, and here's why. So, since last July, we have forgiven, under the statutory terms of the PPP program, more than $350 billion worth of loans. Right? Those are loans that the government has forgiven, turned into grants. And those are loans, by the way, of up to $10 million per business owner. Now, look, we believe that providing support to small businesses is the right thing to do. We didn't
Educational
design
janitor.
PPP. Maybe we would have designed it a little bit differently.
Exactly. Find it, fix it.
But broadly speaking, providing support to small business is a priority of the president. But look, has any Republican in the last year stood up and said, inflation is really high, you guys should stop providing this loan forgiveness to PPP recipients. You should slow it down. Or you should change the rules because it's unfair that these people should get up to $10 million in grants. No, in fact, it's the opposite. The pressure that we've gotten from Republicans on the Hill has consistently been do this faster, make it easier for people to get forgiveness. So our view is, why is there a double standard here? Why is it, from the perspective of Republicans, great to forgive a loan of up to $10 million to a business owner, but if we want to provide $10,000 or $20,000 in loan relief to a teacher or a bus driver or a nurse, all of a sudden it's socialism. That's what doesn't compute from our view. We don't think that that's consistent.
Justin? Thanks. I was wondering if you could talk about the $24 billion number, because it's a little different when you guys canceled the ITT or Corinthian.
What if none of it should have happened?
A lump sum of the total amount. So I'm wondering if it is fair to extrapolate this to say that you believe $240 billion in loans will be canceled, or if not, what are the underlying assumptions that get us to the 24?
I found some cheap gas, but it's still in the $3 range.
Are you assuming
nice.
Growth that will offset
Yeah,
some of it?
I think I paid $350 the other day,
would have defaulted on
and I was just like thanking Biden the whole time.
But wouldn't repay. Does this? I think it doesn't include the other
Ting, random jobs.
That would
Exactly.
So can you just kind of get us to that number, and if there is a top line number?
Yeah. So look, this is a cash flow estimate, which basically says, there's a subsection of borrowers who are going to get relief under this proposal. We estimate that 75% of them are going to take advantage of the relief that they are offered. And if that debt is canceled, that means that if they were scheduled to make $400 worth of payments a year for the next 10 years, that cash flow is no longer going to come in to the government. it's that straightforward. Now, as the OMB
380
item that's going to come out later is going to describe, there are some really key differences between what we are doing, which is a preliminary estimate, and the more complicated and frankly more precise score that is required by federal law. And to give you a few examples, number one, under federal law, to do a budget estimate of this, you have to take the net present value of all of the payments that are foregone. That estimate is going to look at some really important technical implementation decisions that the Department of Education is going to have to make. So, for example, if you're a borrower and you have multiple loans over $10,000, well, if you get $10,000 in relief, which of these loans is going to get canceled? It matters for the cash flow. That's the kind of more sophisticated drilling down type of analysis that's going to happen as part of that process.
326.
Consistent with our
nice.
with budget scoring, but in an effort to provide you all with
I know what kind of state you live in.
That's what we're doing.
Just because I have you right now, and Jay Powell spoke earlier today, he said that the Fed was likely going to continue to pursue interest rate hikes, but that it could result in pain in both a slower economy and jobs.
It will result in pain. That will happen.
Inflation is a major concern, and that's what the Fed is looking at here. But the president is not
Experts
only said that
actually
the Fed
say
is
that
independent, but
high
it
inflation
has sort
and
of endorsed their vision. And
hey,
their
thanks
vision
for
results
the
in job losses
subscription.
and
Find it, fix it.
slowdown.
Yeah, I feel like you've been in my chat before. You just subscribing? Come on,
I'm not going to
man.
answer that hypothetical, but I will say that we have great respect for the independence of the Federal Reserve. I'm not going to comment directly on Chair Powell's comments, but there's been a lot of good data released about the economy, including this morning, that to us gives us a lot of hope about the future trajectory of where things are going and how middle-class families are going to be doing. So, for example, PCE, which is a measure of inflation, came out this morning. In fact, it's the one that the Federal Reserve prefers to the CPI. And what PCE said is that prices fell last year, 0.1%. And at the same time, incomes increased. So that tells a good story about the state of the economy. The University of Michigan put out its consumer sentiment survey this morning. Consumer sentiment is up quite a bit over the last month. And consumers' inflation expectations are down. So again, all good signs there. And of course, if you look back to some of the data releases a little bit earlier, for July we had 528,000 new jobs. CPI, which came out in July, that was flat, so no price increases in July. And of course, everyone's favorite measure of the economy, gas prices, are down over $1 since their peak. So
milk is $4
a lot of
a
good news
gallon
in the economy. We're going to let the Fed.
I can't tell you the last time I bought milk.
Our focus here is to support households.
More of an oat milk kind of guy, because I'm lactose intolerant. Except if you got raw milk, I'll drink that.
With steady and stable growth, which is what the president has said is his goal.
Go ahead, Matt, and I'll come to the back too.
I had two sort of technical questions, but thankfully you're here to answer some technical questions. The first is, you guys have argued about the $1 trillion in deficit reduction. It sounds like it's hard to get to like a $240 billion figure over 10 years with this new estimate, but
on wood
is
gas?
it fair to say that 1.7 trillion becomes 1.5, or it becomes a lower figure given that it's not paid for? Is that a fair way for us to sort of think about what you guys are doing?
That's a fair way of thinking about it. And another way of thinking about it is that we go from the single largest deficit reduction in the history of this country to the single largest deficit reduction in the history of this country.
So the second question is,
you can just say these things and give no context. I love it.
Estimates.
That's freaking politics for you.
This is potentially a deflationary move. Do you have any estimates in terms of how much money will start to come in come January?
What about hydrogen?
And how much money is going to be not coming in? And to articulate a little bit more of how you guys are arriving at that conclusion.
Yeah, we've looked at those numbers, and they informed our view that we put out on Wednesday, that we view that the impact of restarting payments and providing relief are largely going to offset each other. Now, there's different assumptions about, again, as we've covered, there are different assumptions that go into figuring out exactly how much is that going to mean. But in our mind, with a pretty broad range of assumptions,
they are avoiding the word historic. It's coming though.
And there have been a host of independent experts who have said the same thing. In fact,
could feel it.
Goldman Sachs put out an analysis of this proposal, and they said quite clearly that they felt that restarting payments and providing targeted relief would actually be disinflationary. In other words, more money would be coming into the government than going out in the short term, which would help further our efforts to bring down inflation.
But I guess if you
What?
guys are saying 24 billion is the estimate for what won't come in per year. Is there an estimate for next year once once people start paying? Is it 30 billion is coming in and 24 billion is not? Or
Sure. I mean, one way to think about it is this. So we've had a student loan pause in place now for over 2 years. No federal borrowers being required to make any payments. People are voluntarily making payments, so we're actually collecting, roughly speaking, $2 billion a month.
Because people owe money on a loan.
Under normal times, so pre-pause, we were collecting about $6 billion in payments a month from student loan borrowers. So
why is this guy talking like
$4 billion.
this? The difference is
if we turn the loans back on without making any
talk like
other
this,
changes,
I'm way more serious sounding,
roughly
and people
speaking,
take me as like an expert on this issue.
Roughly speaking, we would expect to collect about $4 billion a month in addition to what we're collecting right now, right? So roughly speaking, $48 billion coming into the government that wouldn't have been coming in before. As you can sort of piece together, if the average annual cost of this is $24 billion, that means that on net, about $20 to $24 billion is coming into the government even after we do the relief, right? Now, again, that's not, there's some play in those numbers, but I just want to give you a general sense of how
this guy is a snooze fest.
Just like brass tacks, we were trying to navigate this.
Imagine his job interview.
We got this new information today that the form is going to be available for folks who think they're eligible in mid-October. It's going to take about 4 to 6 weeks for that to be processed. So can you guys guarantee to folks that if they are on time and they put in their application in mid-October, they will definitely see their balance shrink the appropriate amount before repayments have to be due again? And then just another sort of question too, so there's a lot of confusion. If you recently zeroed out your balance in the last few months, can you request a refund and then still apply to
They
get
really do.
this forgiveness?
Great. All right,
They
so
love
on your
numbers
first question, let me
and
just provide a little bit of
given
detail
no
so that
context
people get
on
the full story here. So the application will be available by early October. In the meantime,
nobody's asking the
borrowers can
question,
go to
does the
studentaid.gov,
president
which has
have
been up
any
now for
legality
48
to
hours.
do
They can
this?
provide their email address so they can get notified when
No.
that application goes live. Once the borrower completes the application, they can expect relief within 4 to 6 weeks. So borrowers are advised to apply by roughly November 15th in order to receive relief before the payment pause expires on December 31st. And of course, the Department of Education will continue to process applications as they're received, even after the pause expires on December 31st. So one more point here, which is that we encourage everyone who thinks that they're eligible to go to the website and go to the application when it's available and fill it out. But as we noted during the announcement, there's actually 8 million people, 8 million borrowers, that's about 20% of the borrowers, for whom the Education Department already has data about their income on file. And if those people qualify based on the income on file, they'll actually get relief automatically. So I would refer you to the Education Department for any other questions about that, and your question about refunds.
You'd be insane not to take it.
Right? When the application's available.
Yep.
They should be good to
Legal
go.
is a fluid. Yeah, exactly.
4 to 6 weeks after they submit the
All
application
words
to
are
the
fluid,
estimate. In our
Papa.
view, if you submit by,
Everything means
early to
nothing, and
mid-November,
nothing
you should
means
get the relief
everything.
before the restart happens at the end of December.
Thanks. I wanted to ask for a second about the legal justification for this program.
Thank you. Finally, somebody asked the legality.
Law to justify why COVID's a national emergency and why student relief or debt relief is needed. What's your response to critics that say that that's a stretch in the law? And do you plan, or does different agencies that are involved here plan to put out more legal justification for why this is okay?
Well, look, again, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't want to get into too much of the legal nitty-gritty here, but what I can tell you is that both the Department of Justice Office of Legal Counsel and the General Counsel's Office of the Department of Education have looked at the text of the statute and believe that the action that the Secretary took and that the administration took here is legally justified. There's more detail available in some of the memos that
Legally
they've written,
justified.
and I would recommend that you talk to them about it.
No answer.
But the president was clear from the beginning that he did not want to move forward on this unless it was clear that it was legally available to him.
Bull crap.
And
Bull
one of the first things
crap.
that he did when he came to office was ask for that legal opinion, and got the answer that yes, options were available to him that were legally permissible under that law. And it's worth noting, by the way, that law that you're talking about is the exact same legal authority that the Secretary of Education has been using since 2020 to impose a pause on student loan payments for 45
Exactly,
million borrowers.
Papa. It is totally illegal.
That has not been challenged in court. It has not been found improper by a court. It's the same statute that the previous administration used and that we have used that we are now using for this action.
You, as an administration, have taken existing
What is the
statutes
Constitution?
I don't know if stretch is the right word, but you did it with the eviction moratorium, you did it with vaccines, and we've seen courts push back. In this case, you have people who are really excited and really making plans with this money that they think they're going to save. I mean, what's your response to them? Are you preparing for a legal challenge? What's your response when people are reading that there could be legal uncertainty to your position?
Yeah.
I think they're banking on legal uncertainty, so then they have like something to run on in midterms. Like, we tried to give you debt forgiveness, but the Republicans said no.
Challenge actions in court. It happens all the time. It happens to this administration. It's happened to every administration in history. It's going to be up to the courts to decide whether those are valid claims or not. But we believe that we're on very strong legal ground.
We believe.
A follow-up to that, if a judge
Keyword, believe.
somewhere were to attempt to put a stay on the implementation of the student debt relief, would the payments still resume in January? The other side of the coin. So if the student debt relief were to be stopped by a court, would the other side of it, the payments?
This guy is so nervous.
Yeah, I'm not in a position to answer that hypothetical right now, but it's a good question.
I wanted to just go back to your comparison between this and the PPP loans, because what Republicans and critics are saying is that there's a difference between those decisions being voted on by Congress and those loans that turned into grants being by and large for to cover businesses that were shut down by the government involuntarily because of a natural disaster versus students who
they were forced to shut down
and are now unable for whatever reason to repay them. There is a difference there.
Well, I would say
that is their plan, Papa. I believe it.
We are implementing a law that Congress passed, actually a Republican Congress and Republican president in 2003, the HEROES Act. And again, that's the exact same legal authority that the previous administration used to put a pause on student loan payments. That's the authority that we're using in this instance. So we are acting consistent with the law. And look, to go back to my earlier point, we're not against PPP. We're supportive of the idea that small businesses should get relief. The point is that over the past year, we have been forgiving hundreds of billions of dollars worth of loans to business owners. And remember, that program was stood up very quickly. Money went out the door quickly, and Congress could have come back at any time and said, we should look a little bit more carefully at these loans. Maybe we shouldn't be providing forgiveness to people if they clearly did extraordinarily well during the pandemic. Remember, these are really low interest loans. Maybe we should just make them pay back their loan at a low interest rate rather than forgiving it. None of that happened. We didn't hear from a single Republican pushing for any of that. Everyone was on board with forgiving up to $10 million in loans. And so all we're saying is that
that's because
it's hard
those
to
Republicans are weak.
Credit those same people who are highly supportive of that program and that amount of debt forgiveness, turning around and saying that forgiving a fraction of that amount for working people, not business owners, but working people, somehow that crosses the line over into socialism. That's not how we view it.
What's the difference, though, between... I guess, how are you justifying using the 2003 law that was designed to help military families for this purpose, where you're now helping bail out people who took
put
out
your body
loans
on the line,
and cannot
same
pay
as
them?
going to college
do you
and
view
drinking beer.
People who can't pay their debt
who did extremely well during the pandemic? Oh, I know.
Those who
I don't know, Mark.
in our armed services and were fighting after 9/11.
Yeah. I mean, look, I
know
think
one
as
of
the
them
president
went to
said,
space
there is
during that time.
A real problem here with the burden that student loan debt places on people from low-income and middle-income families. We used to have a system
these people
where
make it seem like the student debt is something that has been done to them, like attacked onto them, as opposed to like kids deciding I'm going to take this on because it's a good decision.
They want to get a degree. They're being told that's the right
You
thing
forced
to
me
do.
to buy a new car.
Why not build in something to make sure that borrowing moving forward?
Build the universities. That is what they should be doing.
Don't just ratchet up the cost.
Yeah,
they are going to ratchet it up.
Because I want to address it. Remember, the president put out a 3-part plan on this, and the third part of it was accountability for colleges. And it detailed a few things. Number one, unlike the previous administration,
No more
which used to raise
$400,000
on
speaking
colleges and
engagements by
universities,
Biden.
rolled back rules that were intended to hold them accountable for raising costs.
Saved to go to college.
This
Exactly.
president and this administration reinstituted an enforcement office at the Department of Education that goes after these types of colleges. It kicked out an accreditor, which is a private company.
Or if you're like me, you
that
just
basically
work while you're
says
in
that,
college.
This institution, this college, is good enough, so they should get federal loans. This accreditor allowed colleges like ITT and Corinthian to get access to federal loans, and then those colleges defrauded people, defrauded students. So this administration responded by kicking that accreditor out of the program. They're not going to be able to accredit colleges anymore. And I would note that a central element of the president's community college plan was accountability.
Exactly,
Either
Papa.
colleges or states that took that money could raise prices on students unfairly. So
You have
all
to
of
go
that
to a
said, I think
huge
that,
state school.
We believe that
Do
the
not go
department
to
should
your
have even more
technical
authority to go
school.
after bad actors, and to hold colleges accountable. And we're eager to work with Congress to advance any proposals along those lines.
I guess I wanted to ask, I know the president last month when he made remarks about the Inflation Reduction Act really highlighted the fact that it would reduce the deficit. And if a larger percentage of the student borrowers end up availing themselves of this program, it would cost
Exactly,
$320
Papa.
billion, right? If you have
Nice.
100%
'Cause you're
uptake,
an
essentially
adult.
over 10 years, and that's the goal. So, is there...
The goal is to grow up,
can
right?
you acknowledge that some people would feel disappointed that this could basically wipe out the savings from that law?
Yeah. No, I'm glad you asked about that, because I think that there's a nuance here that's important to understanding why that doesn't quite work. So when the budgetary score comes out for this proposal, like I talked about, we're going to get a little wonky for a second here. What it's going to do is say that all the loans that are being modified or eliminated here, we have to look over the lifetime of that loan and figure out how many dollars are we not collecting because of that modification. And so, as you know, many loans, the repayment lasts over 10 years. People are repaying for 20, 25 years in instances. So really that score is going to reflect the cost over a much longer time horizon than your standard 10-year budget window. As a result, in our view, the thing that we should compare that score to is not just the first 10 years of the Inflation Reduction Act, it's at least the first 2 decades of it, and maybe the lifetime impact of that. And if you look at outside analyses of the long-term impact of the Inflation Reduction Act, they find that it would reduce the deficit by $1 trillion over the next 2 decades. So in our view, that is the relevant point of comparison.
How that's doing that when the investment is so large for green infrastructure? I don't know.
Ask you about the,
We just say these things now.
updated Penn Wharton estimate, which says just the debt cancellation piece alone would cost up to $519 billion over 10
Right.
years, and then the
Look at him
total
looking
plan
around.
would cost upwards of $1 trillion. Obviously, there is a significant gap between the $24 billion per year that you're citing for $240 billion over 10 years. Just wanted to give you the chance to walk us through why we might see that difference in the two models.
I know it just
Those
came
people
out
are
today. I didn't
liars?
have, too much time to look carefully into it, but I got a chance to skim it. My view is that there's a couple of things. Right off the top, getting to that $1 trillion, they have a massive range on estimating the impact of our reforms to the income-based repayment plan. They say that their baseline estimate is that it costs about $70 billion. But then they say it could cost $450 billion more than that if you make certain assumptions. So, in our view, you can lop off that $450 billion right there because it seems to be somewhat speculative and clearly the top end of the range. Beyond that, the debt relief analysis doesn't do a few things. Number one, it doesn't account for the fact that it assumes 100% of people will take it up. In our mind, that's not necessarily a reasonable assumption.
Who in their right mind wouldn't
look,
just
estimating
get $10,000 free money?
Forgiving certain debt is more complicated than just looking at the face value of the debt that's being canceled.
He's factoring in people just not taking it?
That, let's say you cancel debt for somebody who's been in default for more than 7 years. There's actually millions of borrowers in that position. If the face value of their debt is $10,000,
exactly, Baba. He has no idea.
To say that the cost of that is $10,000.
The cost is $10,000.
You're sitting here collecting $0 on that alone year after year after year.
You might be like, Derek,
So
shut
some
up. I
of
want to
those
listen to him
elements are
talk.
also
He's
gonna
saying
affect,
absolute nonsense.
Affect the score. So the education department has the best data
This
on
is
it. It has all
gaslighting
the
at its
data about
finest.
who
It's
repays,
beautiful.
what to expect about repayment horizons and payment rates, how this interacts with the existing income-based repayment program, and all of that. So we feel confident in our numbers.
Just one follow-up. Given that the upwards of
Confident, we believe. These are all things he keeps saying.
That obviously is a number that's a lot closer to the 1.7 trillion in deficit reduction that you all have been citing. So I'm just curious, was the total cost that this plan would amount to, was that a factor when the president and all of you were deciding what the total amount of forgiveness should be, or was the forgiveness amount, did you get there sort of regardless of the cost, and then you sort of figured out what the general cost would be after?
10K is very random.
That $1 trillion is anywhere in the ballpark of what this is going to cost.
Oh, very well.
Number two, yes, the president was quite focused on what the at least a good estimate of what the cost of this proposal was going to be. It was a
Speak
big
up,
factor
man.
in
Say it with your
his
chest.
Decision. He was looking into and thinking about how that would compare.
Plan is to talk gibberish, blame
that,
Trump, and become
he had been
bratty
able
when
to
logically
secure over the
challenged.
last
That
2
is
years
a modern
during his
leftist,
presidency.
right
Remember,
there in a
first year of
perfect
presidency,
picture,
he brought
Papa.
down the deficit by $350 billion.
You got no loans. That's
It was
beautiful.
a factor.
I didn't get a very
We
big
provided
loan
him with
because
estimates along
I
the
forced
lines of
myself
what
to
we
work.
provided you, and that did play a role in thinking through how to.
A lot of my loans I got were like for books and stuff early on, and then as I worked, I paid it off.
Just two more.
For students who
Because
are
I didn't want to
about
have
new
to
loans,
owe
what
debt.
should the message to them be about whether their loans could be forgiven in the future, and does the White House have an obligation to emphasize it?
And what about the new college grads or the people that are just going to college? Are they just going to assume it's going to be forgiven?
One-time thing in terms of the.
This is a one-time thing. Okay.
This is an authority that.
I'm sure that's going to go real well with the
said,
people.
And the president believes that this relief is warranted in this instance, coming out of the pandemic and as we transition back into repayment. It is not the kind of authority that you can use.
Why is this?
But what I would say to that student is that these income-based
if you're touting how great the
reforms
economy
that are also
is,
part of this
how
proposal
many people have
designed to help,
jobs, why is
people
this
who
time
go
a good
school
time to
and
give
end up
loans?
having lower income, middle income jobs.
Forgiveness.
Going forward. Remember, we had some examples.
This is just
in the
all
fact sheet
such
that we
bulk.
put out,
Like, you're just
alongside
making
the
things
proposal
up.
Showing that.
Don't forget, they're spending $315 billion in this plan. Yes, they only spent $28 million to fly the baby flyer,
the income-based
to feed starving
reforms
babies.
represent a savings of $1,000, $1,500 a year or more,
Well,
depending on
babies
their exact
aren't part of the
circumstances.
plan.
So
It's not the voting
it
base.
was really important to the president that this package of proposals not just be relief for current borrowers. It's a reform to the system, so that future borrowers also get more manageable debt loads going forward.
Okay. I think the in-town pool has to gather, so folks need to.
You can't just do this as a one-off. These entitled people will ask for more.
Many comparisons have been made from the American system to foreign governments, where higher education is government-funded, taxpayer-funded, at no cost to the student. How did foreign systems inform the decision for loan forgiveness? And is there any economic data we can glean from those countries that we might see as a result of the loan forgiveness decision?
Yeah, as we've talked about, part of the reason that we're in this position, part of the reason why the cost of college...
We have been out of the pandemic for over a year. Yeah.
In the last 4
What about all the
since
foreign
1980.
students that come here for college?
Part of it is that
are
there
they
has
getting
been
their
a
debt
significant
forgiven?
amount of disinvestment, especially at the state level. So states used to put more money into funding public education, public higher education in their states, and that helped keep tuition down, especially for in-state students. What we've seen in recent decades is pulling back on that and basically shifting the burden onto students who come from lower income and middle income families. And as I noted, the federal government hasn't done enough to step in and fill that void. And the value of the Pell Grant has deteriorated from 80% to 33%. So, what the president has called for, as you know, is a series of increased federal investment that would make it easier for folks from lower income and middle income families to go to college, right? Doubling the Pell Grant. Right now, the Pell Grant's about $6,500 a year. He wants to double it to $13,000 a year. That represents a significant amount of relief for people from lower income, middle income families. And as I talked about, he's also pushing to make community college free.
All right.
Give a mouse a cookie.
I'll stay a little longer for
Yes. I like simple words, big pictures.
That was very helpful.
All right,
Thank you.
here we go. Here's some historic talk.
Okay, so I'll stay a little bit longer and take some questions for folks who are still here. Okay, just just a topper for you, and this is something that Bharat
topper.
alluded to, talked about, which is the PCE. While there is more work to do to bring prices down, we received several pieces of encouraging economic news today from PCE. The new data on the personal consumption expenditures, what economists call, again, PCE, show that in July, incomes went up while prices went down.
I'm strapped in,
based on this
Papa.
measure, inflation went down in July. This was largely driven by the fastest decline in gas prices in a decade. The national average is now down to $3.87 per gallon.
Amazing.
The American people are starting to get some relief from high prices.
Thank
and
God.
That's underscored by new data that shows consumer sentiment is up 13% since July. And 1 year expenditures of inflation
Since
dropped
July.
by nearly a half a percentage point. That's encouraging news as well. The president's #1 economic priority is lowering costs while sustaining our historic economic recovery. The
You're a
recently
lying
signed
dog-faced
CHIPS
pony
Act and
soldier.
Inflation Reduction Act will do just that. Once again, we have more work to do, as we have said over and over again. We
I love that
continue to
you
face
could clearly
real
tell
global
she's reading.
challenges, and we are always careful to not read too much into any 1 month's data. But what we saw today is encouraging evidence that we are on the right course and we are making progress. Amr?
Does the president believe that it was appropriate for the former president to have classified information and unsecured?
Here we go.
So,
George is
as it
getting upset.
relates to, and I understand why folks have an interest in this, we totally get that, but as it relates to any comments on anything related
Gotta get that chocolate milk.
to this independent investigation, even any underlying materials, we feel that it is not appropriate for us to comment on this. This is an independent investigation that the Department of Justice is leading. That's something that the president finds is an important thing to do for the Department of Justice to have.
I'm sorry
that
if
independence.
you
We're
can
just
barely
not
hear.
gonna
This
comment.
is literally as loud as I can get her.
The president yesterday suggested that Republican ideology is veering towards semi-fascism. Could you just clarify what exactly does the president mean by that? And secondly, the president also
Biden did call
respects
Republicans
conservative
fascists
Republicans,
yesterday.
but he does not respect MAGA
Sounds a lot like Antifa.
More than 70 million Americans voted for Trump in 2020. Does he not respect those voters?
No, I mean, that's not what he said. I think he was pretty clear and he was very powerful last night. Look, what the president said last night
Yeah,
was
folks
that
have
when
an
it comes
interest
to
in-
MAGA Republicans, when it comes
Here we
to
go.
the extreme, ultra wing of Republicans, they are attacking democracy. Right? They are taking away rights and freedoms. They are using
They're taking away
threats
rights
of
and freedom?
Of violence.
Threats of violence?
They are taking away voting rights, and he called it what it is. That's what he did. He called it what it is, and what many, we would argue, historians would agree with us on. And so, what Joe Biden believes
my
is, as
God.
president, he should, and president should, be the strongest voice for democracy. And so he was
We're a
making,
republic.
that very clear. He was making that contrast to what congressional
Antifa is just an
Democrats
idea,
have
like
been
obsession of
doing, which is
democracy.
fighting
Exactly.
for our rights, fighting for freedom, delivering.
Yeah, he's fighting for
on
so much
an
freedom.
Economy that is historic. 10 million
Historic,
jobs
we heard
that
it!
have been created, lowering prescription drugs, and making sure that we take on those special interest groups. And we saw just a couple weeks ago that we won. So he's making that contrast, trying
Nice
to
job,
make that
Papa.
very clear of what we are seeing today. And so he was passionate about this, he was eloquent about this, and he also, when it comes to what you're asking me about Republicans who are conservative, clearly he said that he believed there are traditional conservative Republicans. He was very
You mean
clear on
weak
that. He
Republicans.
specifically
That's what he
called
meant by
out and
that.
mentioned,
He misses the weak
Maryland Governor
Republicans.
Larry Hogan as one of them. So, but we have to really, make sure that we make
Shout
it
out to
clear
Papa
that
for
there's a
making us
choice
scream.
in front of the American people, right? And we have to make sure that we make it loud and clear that when it comes to MAGA Republicans, we call that out, and that's what he did, and what they're doing, right? What they're doing in attacking our democracy, and so he wanted to be clear on that.
Every day a MAGA Republican is born and attacks our democracy.
Good night.
Has the White House made any changes in light of the
They're such children.
The former president's handling of classified material to its own processes or training procedures for handling sort of protected and secret information?
I don't have anything to share with you. Again, we're just going to be really mindful. I know I get the question
Exactly,
that you're
Papa.
asking. We're just not going to share any change in
Eloquent
processes.
means
We're
barely
not gonna
strung
share
together.
Any information,
You
anything
completed
that's
it.
related to this. Any content, any underlying materials to the investigation that the Department of Justice is doing. Again, an independent investigation. We're just not going to comment at this time.
Just back to loan forgiveness for a second. NPR's done a lot of reporting on sort of administrative processing failures at the Department of Education for these loan programs. These are kind of lapses in income-based repayment and sort of profession-based repayment that Secretary Cardona has acknowledged. Is the administration concerned at all about similar issues for the sort of coming loan forgiveness program, or ways that it might give up the leave borrowers in the lurch?
So look, you just mentioned Secretary Cardona has been really clear about the previous loan forgiveness programs or other programs that have been before him and in his agency. Look, we take this very seriously. We believe that this is an important plan that's going to give relief, again, to up to 43 million Americans. It's a very targeted plan that's going to give relief to 90% of Americans that are making less than $75,000 a year. That is important. This is a campaign promise.
They keep
that the
they
president
keep
made.
reiterating the
And he went
$75,000,
beyond,
even
not
though
just
it
the
goes up to
10,000,
125.
but
They'll
up to
continue to say it.
20,000. So
It's
we're
a new
gonna do
talking point.
everything that we can to make sure that that gets delivered. But of course,
She
we're gonna
probably is
hear
a little
from
dead
folks,
inside.
and see if they'll take us up on it. Again, this is an important piece of important plan that is historic. We have not seen any president do this before.
Yeah, because it's
we're gonna
illegal.
do everything that we can.
It's illegal to do what he
We're gonna
did.
do everything with
That's
that
why
they
you've
can
never
with,
seen a
that
president
he
do
can
it
with his
before.
team, to get this done. Go ahead, April.
Karine, this Sunday will be the 59th anniversary of the March on Washington. And how is this White House, how is this president marking that moment, particularly as he decided to run for office because of the massacre in Charlottesville, as he walked in talking about equity and equality?
Oh no, did I miss
So
one?
let me
Papa?
first say a couple of things, because this is it is an important day, and I want to give it the due as you're asking me this question. You're right. When the president
I
and so
missed
many
it.
Americans saw what was happening.
We'll go harder next
not
time I
too
hear it.
long ago, but back in 2017, just in August of 2017, and we saw what was happening in Charlottesville. That moved him. What we saw, the hatred.
It's
that
such a
we saw
stupid talking
there,
point.
That moved him, and that moved so many of us. And he actually wrote
Yeah, right.
an op-ed talking about what he thought that meant for this country, and how sad and devastating it was.
Imagine
to see
Joe Biden
that type
actually
of
writing an
behavior,
op-ed.
That type of hatred, and that type of sentiment that was very public, and also
I
someone
feel like it
lost
was
their
like
lives.
6 years ago.
So
That
we
was a
wanna
long
make sure
time
that
ago.
we don't forget that day as well, or that weekend as well. And when the president came into office, he took that, when talking about dealing with racial equity, he took his.
She has no
he
idea
took
what
that
she's
very
saying.
seriously. And you see that across
She
the
stopped
agency.
talking.
He signed an executive order talking about how he wanted to make sure that there was racial equity within the agencies across
So,
the federal
racist?
government. And you have seen him do that. And Susan Rice, as you know, the ambassador is leading that effort with her department, and dealing with the different agencies, and making sure that we deal with racial inequities, even here in the agencies. So as it relates to March on Washington and that anniversary, the president has said this before, and I'll reiterate. The March on Washington and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech.
She is talking
changed the
so
course of
quietly.
history. We continue to reaffirm our commitment to fulfilling America's founding promise.
Uh-oh,
And the
here comes
president
that
has made
pre-written thing.
advancing equality core
Joe
to the
Biden would write an
administration,
op-ed
as I
in
just
crayon.
laid out. We can't rest until justice truly
historic moment.
reigns out for all of us. I don't have anything specific on what the president's going to be doing on this, but we will share if we have anything more.
And there was a missed opportunity, if you will. Civil rights leaders wanted to mark the anniversary Sunday by having a meeting with the president this week. Could you talk about that? Is there effort to try to have this meeting happen?
No, Biden
soon?
will be in Delaware on the
Was it a
beach
missed
in one of his
opportunity,
many
et cetera?
multi-million dollar
I'll
beach
say
homes.
this. I don't have a meeting to read out or speak to at this time, but we have stayed in regular touch with civil rights leaders. You know this, April. You've talked. I think you've reported
You
on
said regular?
the many meetings that this administration has had with civil rights leaders. We are in close touch with them. The president has a very good relationships with many of those leaders, and so we find those relationships important. That we will continue to grow. Again, I don't have a meeting or anything to lay out, but
You
again,
could
we're
just
in
say
regular
no.
touch with members of that community.
And lastly, is equity still one of the major one of the major pillars of this administration?
Is
this still
communism one of the major
fundamental
pillars
pieces
of this administration?
Oh, it is. It is.
Oh, good to know.
I'll just remind you, when the president walked into this administration, I've said this many times before at the podium, he laid out
He
the
loves
different crises,
communism.
that were before him.
Yeah.
When he came in, racial equity was one of them, and saying that we needed to do everything that we can to deal with that crisis in a real way. And he has taken those actions, as the GRIO has reported on, as many of you in this room has reported on the steps that he has taken.
Man, this girl's getting a
It
lot of
doesn't stop with
FaceTime on this
executive order.
question.
It also is actions that we're going to continue to
Talk
to
about
take
race,
within,
man. She can go all
the White
day.
House as well. Okay.
Okay, I'm done.
Because I didn't take your question.
In New York and DC, mayors have said the federal government isn't doing enough to help with migrants who are being sent by bus to their cities.
She does have an impressive ability to take 10 minutes. Say, I don't know.
So
Exactly.
the administration has been in regular touch with Mayor Bowser, clearly the mayor of DC, and Mayor Adams, mayor of New York City, and FEMA regional administrators have been meeting with both mayors on site to coordinate available federal support from FEMA and other federal agencies. Funding is also available through FEMA's emergency food and shelter program to eligible local governments and non-for-profit organizations upon request to support humanitarian relief for migrants, as we have done many times.
FEMA's getting involved to help
Governor
DC
Abbott's
with a
repeated
couple
attempts to
thousand
create
of
chaos.
migrants,
And
of
really, to
illegal
create chaos
immigrants
and
that were
confusion.
bused.
That's what he's doing at the border and
Oh,
costing.
of course
his
they are.
own constituents.
And you talk about Texas, they're like,
well over $1
the
million.
border is locked down,
So
so
we
shut
will
your
work
freaking
to
pie
manage
hole.
the consequences of this latest political charade that we see from the governor, and we do take this
my-
very seriously, and I continue going to work with
Oh
Mayor
my
Bowser and Mayor
God, these
Adams.
people are the
I
worst.
will point you to a statement that FEMA put out.
Yeah,
earlier
I do
this
remember
week,
that.
laying out the
Papa.
steps that they have taken and what they're doing to provide assistance. Okay, I'm just going to call on folks I haven't called on.
Sure. Thanks, Karine. Just to get something on record, does the White House have any response to the release of the search warrant affidavit for Mar-a-Lago?
I'm just going to say what I just told this young man a few minutes ago. We understand. Again, we understand the
How
the
do you know
interest
he's a man?
in this. We are not going to
Just
comment
walking around
on any
gendering
underlying
people
materials, any
willy-nilly.
content that is related to an ongoing investigation. This is an independent investigation, legal investigation that the Department of Justice has the independence to conduct, and we do not feel it is appropriate for us to comment.
Real briefly on student loans, does the White House believe that federal student loans play any role in the increasing cost of college, since students are able to, take on more debt that they don't have to pay off right away? Does that allow colleges to increase their
Yes.
costs maybe more than they might?
The answer to that
I've gotten
question
this
is yes.
question in the past.
Because it's
not in the
an
past, it's
obvious
just been a couple
question.
days of this week. And so one of the things, and I think Bharat talked about this.
Of course they didn't,
because there's
Papa.
been questions about, is this going to raise the tuition by doing this from colleges? Look, this is something that the Secretary of Education, Secretary Cardona, he has said this
Exactly,
in
George
interviews that he'll be
Floyd.
monitoring, keeping a close eye on. He will continue to take the
Hands
steps
up, don't
to
shoot.
hold colleges accountable for raising costs without delivering additional value. So that's a big piece of what you were asking me, but already the administration has taken actions to accountable measures. We reinstated an enforcement office at the Department of Education. We terminated a college creditor that had previously allowed colleges that defrauded borrowers to get access to federal student loans. That's something that Bharat just talked about specifically moments ago. And we're rolling out new resources to help students make more informed decisions on which school will better deliver value for the cost. Look, once again, I just want to say this, you have one thing that people are told, young people in particular are told, is that in order to
Right,
have a
This will
a
definitely
good
raise
job or have a
tuition. Why
career,
would
you
they-
gotta go to college and get that education or continue that education, and there's some communities that need a little bit of help, and we should be providing that little bit of help. That's why we did a targeted, the president did a targeted, fiscally responsible approach in making sure that we give Americans a little bit more breathing room, middle class Americans a little bit more breathing room. And when you do that,
I hate
they
talking
are
points so
gonna have
much.
extra money to buy that house. They're going to have a little extra money to start.
Oh
that
yeah,
family.
people have extra
And
money to
so
buy the
that
house
is
with that
important
high
as well, and, that is
interest
something
rate
that the
now.
president is certainly
Mhm.
committed to. No, go ahead. I'll come around. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Sebastian. I was pointing to Sebastian, and then I'll.
He goes
I'll
by
come around.
Seabass.
People right behind
It's so funny.
I didn't wanna assume-
I actually think when I'm pointing to someone specific, but from the other.
I got it. I'm in there now. So two questions. For
Sure.
On the semi-fascism
God,
comment.
you guys just need to go make out after
We're
this.
going to hear more of that phrase. Is it something the president's going to kind of embrace, or is there any sense that it was, a little impromptu, and it's going to turn into a kind of basket of deplorables thing that he regrets and tries to be quiet about?
Look, I was very clear when laying out and defining what MAGA Republicans have done, and you look at the definition of fascism, and you think about what they're doing in attacking our democracy, what they're doing in taking away our freedoms, wanting to take away our rights, our voting rights. I mean, that is what that is. It is very clear, and that's why he made that.
Nothing about that was clear.
That powerful speech that you heard from him last night, and he has not shied away from saying that. You have heard him maybe not use that specific word, but you have heard him certainly use that definition. And look, what we are putting before the
Just
American
run around
people
calling people fascists.
is a choice.
That's where
right?
we're at.
And it is clear. There's a clear
We're not
contrast
tampering
of
down
what
in
is
this
happening
in this
on
country.
that side.
We're not
of
coming
the aisle,
together.
and what's happening on our side with congressional Democrats and what we have been delivering for the American
I don't know what MAGA
people.
did.
And we're going to.
They're not in power, so it's not like.
freedom. We're going to continue to fight for people's rights.
I am still waiting on the list.
And that is not.
Don't you remember
that is
January
something that he
6th?
takes very seriously, and that's what you heard from him last night.
Just quickly, on the other side of the world, how confident is the administration that European allies are going to be able to weather the energy crisis that they seem to be going into, and winter is obviously going to get worse.
Energy crisis.
Finnish people are apparently not taking saunas already, but it's getting worse than that. Not to make light of it. And politically, is a concern that this whole alliance over Ukraine is going to really start cracking when that bites.
So, just a couple of things, and I have a few
answer to
things
that
I
question
want to
is
say because this is an
yes.
important question. So, President Putin is weaponizing energy, right? You've heard us say that before, and that is exactly what is happening. This is why President Biden set up a task force with the EU back in March to work on ways to increase alternative sources of natural gas to Europe, including from the United States. We've made progress
Exactly,
since March.
Papa.
Global LNG exports to Europe has risen by 84% compared to 2021, while the U.S. share of those LNG exports have been nearly tripled. And so that's important to note. In fact, global LNG exports to Europe since March have increased by 20 billion cubic meters compared to last year, already exceeding the pledge President Biden made back in March to work with partners to ensure additional volumes for the EU market of at least 15 billion cubic meters this year. We know we have more work to do, and we'll keep.
You can
looking
just
for
say
ways to
you don't know the
increase
answer to that
gas
question.
Stockpiles in Europe, coupled with efforts to reduce Europe's
didn't even
demand
answer it.
for natural gas through energy efficiency and clean energy deployment. The path to energy security requires a doubling down on our efforts to transition
That's
to a
right.
clean energy economy.
Yes, the
and we
poor
continue
people will
to
probably
work with
die
Europe
due to
on
blackouts
this,
and stuff like
shared
that, but
goal.
we
Look,
are making
what you
historic
have seen
advances
this
in green
past
energy as
several
we
months,
speak.
more than 6 months.
Yes, many of those
even before
Eastern
we saw
European
the
nations
war,
are just going to have
in
to rely on
Ukraine,
Russia
the
eventually because we're not going to
war
actually
by
help them,
Russia, is a unified
and they're not going to help
West.
themselves anymore due
You
to
see the NATO,
climate accords.
alliance, the strongest than it's ever been.
Russia, one
It
country,
is
the
going
entire
to,
planet on a stranglehold.
looks like it's going to
Exactly.
extend by 2,
And China,
and that would not
no
have
problems.
happened if they weren't united, if we didn't see the leadership of this president. And so we believe that
This is the most ridiculous answer.
Alliance, that partnership.
I don't know
is
how
going to continue.
journalists just take
We are
it,
going
'cause I'd be
to
like,
make sure that
you didn't
our
answer my
partners
question.
in Ukraine has what they need to
Partners in
continue to fight
Ukraine
for their
has what they
freedom and
need,
fight for their
huh?
sovereignty. Oh, we have to go. Okay, I'll take. Go ahead, Brett. I was supposed to call on Brett. Go ahead.
I gotta go. Questions are getting a little
I know
hard.
Today marks the anniversary of the terrorist attack in Kabul in Afghanistan. I saw the president's statement this morning, but I was curious: has he reached out to any of the families of the victims of that attack, or does he have any plans to address the anniversary of the withdrawal at length to the American people?
So the president put out a statement earlier today, and as you all probably saw, some of you probably saw the statement that was released. He named each of the 13 troops who were tragically killed on that day. The president feels deeply about the loss that was suffered 1 year ago. And as he said in that statement, he feels strongly that we owe their families support for the rest of their lives. That is something that he's committed to. We are never going to stop seeking justice
of shame and guilt?
For those who
Maybe?
were involved in planning of that attack, or for terrorists who threaten our homeland on
Here we
any
go.
other day.
Genuine talking
So,
points.
no president feels more strongly about our troops and their families than this president. And he and the First Lady have taken action to support our service members and their families through joining forces and signing the historic burn pits legislation that, as you all know, expands benefits for veterans, and it was incredibly historical. Again, I point you to the statement. I don't have anything more to share. I will take one last question. Somebody I haven't called on. Rob, I know I haven't. I know you've been raising.
Does he
Rob,
know
go
the
ahead.
1,000+ names of Americans he abandoned?
Just to follow up,
I'm not sure what you mean by that question, Papa.
Marine killed in the suicide attack last year. He thinks that taping.
Did I miss it again?
Jay Leno this afternoon is insensitive and tone deaf.
Again,
I'm the worst.
this is something that's very personal to the president. It was a tragic killing on that day. 13 members were lost, as well as 170, more than 170 lives of Afghan lives. So this is incredibly important day that he wants to make sure that he acknowledged, which is why he put out the statement. But he and the First Lady have not lost focus on those families or any of the families that have lost loved ones in this 20-year war. Remember, we were there for 2 decades.
There we go.
Lost a lot of lives.
That's
Through
empathy
joining
right there.
forces, as I just
You should be
mentioned,
thanking
the
Biden in
benefits
this moment.
legislation, the president just signed. That is important as well. That is the work that this president is committed to doing, and that is a big deal, an important thing for service members and their families. And again, no president feels more strongly about our troops and their families than this president, who himself, the father of a service member who served in Iraq. So this is
To film something with a comedian? I mean, are you worried about the optics of that at all?
what I will tell you is that this is a
Exactly,
day,
Papa.
A tragic day that the president takes very personal. Not just the president, also the First Lady.
What?
And I will let his words, the statement, stand for itself. He knows this. Again,
Why
as
do
a
we care what the
father
First Lady
himself
thinks?
Of a service member.
I don't know. Their
that
obsession
served
with the First
in
Lady.
Iraq. So
She
we do
wasn't
not take
voted
this
for.
lightly. We take this very seriously. You know, our hearts are with the family.
I can feel how serious you are based on your voice.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go.
Oh, the African guy. She never
I'll
talks
take
to
that one
him.
really quickly, and then we're
She
gonna
never
go.
talks. She always ignores him.
Because this is important. The United States congratulates the people of Angola for making their voices heard in Wednesday's elections. We continue to observe the electoral process as votes are counted. We encourage peace and patience as the vote tally process continues. The United States supports the democratic process through our ongoing democracy and governance programs and by observing the election. Election observations promote participation and public confidence
I feel like I
in the
missed another
electoral
historic.
process. The United States and Angola share a strong partnership. We will continue to work together with the government chosen by the Angolan people to deepen cooperation around shared priorities, including democracy, economic growth and investment, global health security and public health, and climate and energy goals to create a better future for all Angolans. The United States commends the people of Angola for their participation in the democratic process and efforts to strengthen democratic institutions, which will provide a foundation for a safe, prosperous, healthy, and inclusive future for both of our countries. Thank you, everybody. Have a great weekend. I'll see you on Monday.
Oh, my God. Have a nice weekend. I love you. Bye. First Lady is a doctor, therefore she's an expert on... she is an expert on anything. Exactly. Call me a doctor. Okay, doctor of education. Ever heard of it? Oh, man. What did we find out? What did we find out from this press conference? Gaslighting is still at an all-time high. What's in the Trump affidavit that's being released that's completely redacted? I don't know. A couple top secret things, so we're going to talk about that for the rest of our lives. Was giving debt relief completely illegal? Certainly seems like it. They don't have an answer for that question. They say that they believe what they did was right. I think they're all banking on hopefully the court striking this down, and then they have Republicans to blame for taking free money away from everyday people, and then they have an scapegoat, and they have the thing to point the finger at. That's where we're at in society. That's where we're at in politics in general. It's not actually making a difference in people's lives as long as you have a bad guy, as long as you can point the finger at the other and say, this is what they're doing to me. Then you have a platform to run on that people will continue to vote. We'll just continue pumping money into the machine of the Democrats and Republicans, and then we'll continue to point fingers at each other as nothing gets done, and they care more about other countries than they do about their own citizens. And that's where we're at in this freaking democracy.
Good evening from New York. I'm Chris Hayes.
As I like to call it, a republic. And that's all. So what did we learn today? We learned that 20 different ways to make a word salad. Yeah. That is the press briefing at its finest. It's all gaslighting. It's all word salad. It's all like pre-written, genuine, empathetic notes for the other, for them to be like, the president actually cares. All right, guys, I'm going to go back to work. And then I'm going to come back and live stream a little later. So come hang out with me later. We're going to party like it's Friday. Hopefully we have some good clips to overview, look over, and some good stories. Is the media is going to lose their mind about the whole affidavit. They're going to, because of how vague it is, they aren't going to be able to not stop talking about it, about the possibility of what's actually in this non-redacted form of this document. We learned that the Tiki Torch demonstration is the worst thing to happen since the cancellation of Firefly Festival. That whole Tiki Torch thing, that's such a weird thing. Such a small number of people, 100 people, and then they create an entire narrative, and then they say, it's the same thing with like January 6th. They put everyone in the same box. They're just like, if you are for American first politics, if you think that American politicians should prioritize everyday American citizens over other people, all of a sudden you're a racist and you're a fascist. It just makes no sense. But that's where we're at. Let's not actually engage in conversation with one another. Let's just name call each other because it makes me feel safer on the inside. Working tonight. Have a good stream. Hey, work hard, my dude. Work hard. All right, guys. Have a good day. I'll catch you later today. I might actually live stream a little earlier and then play some retro video games because it's the kind of day I'm having. Have a great day. Freaking love you guys. Tell your friends and family about the Derek O'Shea Show. I appreciate you guys so much. Bye-bye.